Each of us have been at this for more than 20 years, and we're tired. Tired of hearing people think that they have no hope, no future, and that they will simply sit in their cubicles and survive working in IT. Well, we're here to tell you right here, right now, that you can thrive in IT, and we are going to prove it.
Bringing you great stories
About great people in information technology
that it turns out are just like you. Welcome to THRIVEcast.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another THRIVEcast. This is THRIVEcast episode 37. Good to have you with us today. And honestly, I'm excited. This is going to be a great episode. We've got a ton of you watching live. If you're here live with us, say hi. If you are part of the Restream crew, go ahead and just leave us a comment, and you might see it. But we'll be restreaming this and replay as well, available. But you can always subscribe to us right here on YouTube by going to thrive-it.com/YT and get yourself subscribed. If you're here viewing with us live, go ahead and say hi or click the like button and subscribe right there. It's all good. If you don't like what you're hearing, don't hit subscribe. It's not for you. It'll just throw off the all-knowing YouTube algorithm, and that's not any fun. But it's all good. So hey, let me bring in the one and only Jeff Pitch.
Thought you were bringing in Brian at first.
I want to say one and only for every guest we ever have.
I like the pause. You gave that dramatic pause right there.
Dramatic.
That was awesome. Oh, so this is going to be memory lane, man, for me. I know that much.
Indeed. Mike Meyer says, hello. David Fainer says, hey, everybody.
Hey, David. Oh, look, somebody did code some basic there. Hello, world.
Yeah, indeed. I like that.
Just don't do go to 10.
Arrow, Dennis, all saying hi. James saying hi. Good to see all
Jim
of you.
Seaback, Unidesk.
Yeah.
Love it.
Good to everybody here. It's going to be a good week for it. So honestly, there's a ton of things to be excited about, but before we bring them on, I just want to say that this has just been a good validation for what we've been doing lately. This is to have somebody that was an early influence on me on wanting to go beyond just being there in my cubicle and clacking away at a keyboard all day, and actually wanting to share my knowledge and share what I know. So it's a great thing to bring on a certain intellectual individual who has fine tastes in reading, I must say.
Oh,
hello.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you over there. Just do that. What a book.
Awesome.
What a book. I've got a collection now here. So I
can very nice.
DJ Hero. Is DJ Hero on PlayStation, or is that a Xbox game, or
hey, we're gonna have to make
where
that.
do I play that?
I
always figure some
Next
circles
gen.
are falling down, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, look, the puns. We were playing jazz music. DJ was playing jazz music. Jeff, what do you think? we got DJ, we got jazz, we got Jeff. You see what I'm saying? All the pieces are here.
I love it. Alliteration. Yeah. It's all good. So yeah, welcome to the show, Brian. This is Brian Madden, everybody. I forgot to put up our names on the screen. I'm
thanks
today. Look at that.
Yeah, hey.
I wouldn't have recognized Brian if you hadn't put the name there.
I mean, look I'm 43. My hair it's natural color. It's combed down, like kind of flat. It's my background to turn into photos of the suburbs. I'm wearing like a regular shirt, so it's it could take an introduction. Yeah, but yeah, no, guys, I'm just really glad. I heard the show only for the first time a few months ago, and then it's like in the background as I'm cleaning, since I don't drive a car anywhere anymore. So I've been kind of catching up. So really glad to be able to join you guys today.
Right on.
Well, thank you. And we've only been around for a few months, so that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as track records go, that's pretty decent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those of you, so I'm a guest on a lot of podcasts and webcasts and stuff over the years, and this one is the most like professionally done. Like they send you thank you gifts that are autographed. They send you stickers, and the sticker has a little handwritten like your custom URL on the end for your actual show. And like the green room and the email that went out ahead of time. It's very, very well done. So nice work. In no way does that affect the content of what you're presenting, but from the technical delivery, primo, guys.
Think with
it's a good start.
It'd be so much better when it comes to the content, but yeah. No, it's all good. So we got plenty of people watching live, which is great. So Brian, what I wanted to do is dig in here and get a little bit of background. I mean, obviously, most people know you from either your work with a certain website that's called brianmadden.com. Really
And it
original.
was called brianmadden.com.
Yes.
Now it's called.
Oh, sorry?
Exactly. That's what it's called now. It's gone.
It's like,
It's a big piece of EUC history right there, man.
right, the Wayback Machine.
Big piece of my history there, actually. Yeah. But anyway, I didn't want to cut you off. Yeah. brianmadden.com. That was my thing. People know me.
Yeah. So that's how I was introduced to you, and I think I still owe you a 6-pack of tasty beverage that I,
I'm
promised
unclear
way
why, but I'm not saying no. So in fact, for future podcast guests, like books and beers are great, or like just beers is fine, actually.
Yeah. It's
for guests. Yeah.
It's the gift that, well, it doesn't really keep on giving. It really,
Twice. It gives twice. Yeah.
It gives twice.
You could do a beer mug. That'd be something. Then
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Have our own THRIVEcast mug. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be the thing. So anyway, as far as that goes, that's how I think a lot of people would know you. And of course, now doing fantastic work with VMware and really kind of shaping things as far as EUC is concerned over there. It's just fantastic to see what's been happening with that company and everything like that. So, but let's go way back. Let's go clear back to your origins. Like, I don't want to say like birth, but as far as you want to go.
Is it like a superhero? He's got like a spider bit.
Origin story.
Yes, so I come from Ohio, where I'm a Cleveland sports fan, including the Cleveland Browns. I just want to point out in this book I was reading, Just Do This, I read that DJ Eshelman grew up in Colorado, where he lived until 2017. He currently lives near Nashville, Tennessee. None of those are near Pittsburgh.
Nope.
So I got some questions about your your decor in the background there.
Well, I mean, actually, further on, and full disclosure, I just sent him a copy of this pretty recently, so he hasn't had time to fully dig into all of it. But hidden in the introduction there's actually a little bit more about a correlation between a services methodology and football and kind of how teams work and that sort of thing. And there's also, I think, a little bit more of that with a kind of there's like a behind the scenes or like deleted scene kind of a thing. Some things I wanted to put in the book and decided not to, that are actually part of the audio book as part of the bonuses for the book as well. But
Man.
The football thing, it's like you look at the coaches that have been part of the Steelers and the players and whatnot, and they tend to be more in the long game, than a lot of teams. And they're not unique in that regards, but they're also one of those that has had 3 coaches since like the 60s. I mean, it's crazy how much
I think
legacy is built in.
I think Tomlinson's the 4th. Yeah.
Now you can't talk to Jeff, a Lions fan, and me, a Browns fan, talk about long game. We are playing the long game, my friend.
The Lions
has been a long way to go to get those rings, or
yeah.
I'd settle just for a playoff, couple of wins, maybe an appearance in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Both
to
neither
win
Jeff
it?
nor the Tigers nor the Lions nor the Browns have a Super Bowl appearance, if I'm correct. That's right. Yeah.
Richard
yeah,
said you don't have to be from Pittsburgh to like a quality football team. It's very true.
Oh, that's a bandwagon. Coming out, be a Browns fan. Put a stick in the ground.
I think it's my favorite.
All I gotta say, Brian, is thank you for going 0-16 and taking that pressure off of the Lions.
Yeah. And by the way, the season we did go 0-16, we went 1-15 the prior year. So it was kind of like 1-15. Well, it can't get any worse. Universe is like, hold my beer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most Browns fans always get upset when I say I'm from Colorado because of the,
Denver.
thing happening
The drive, the fumble. So, so I grew up in Ohio, big football town, a big football part of the country. It's like I was into like computers, playing with kids. My dad poured concrete and my mom raised us. And so I sort of like did the computer thing on my own. And just my first computer was a TI 99 4A. I learned it from the manual. And then I've always been pretty entrepreneurial. And so in high school, just started kind of fixing people's computers on the side and made little brochures that I would come to your house and fix your computer and kind of got to supporting small businesses. This is in the early 90s. So it was a lot of BNC networking, NetWare, Landtastic, that kind of stuff. So I just kind of cut my teeth with that. Didn't go to college, and just kind of kept on working and sort of worked my way into IT and was doing systems engineering and kind of working for like VARs and partners. And in the late 90s, I learned about the Citrix thing and, just kind of grew from there. There's another guy named Scott Archer who is a coworker at VMware. Actually, I haven't seen him since VMworld last time in person, but Scott Archer, I worked with 20 years ago. He wrote a book about Active Directory. And I'm like, you can write books? Like, how do you do that? And he's just starts talking about, pick a topic. And I wanted to write a book. It was really cool. And I knew SMS, which I have to clarify is what Microsoft Systems Center Configuration Manager was called back then, not the text messaging.
Rolls off the tongue,
I knew SMS and I knew Citrix. And I went on Amazon. There was more books on SMS already than there was in Citrix. So I'm like, okay, I'll write a book about Citrix. And I didn't want to write a test prep guide. I was doing a lot of Citrix consulting and wanted to do like an actual like hands-on kind of like when the manual ends, what are the next steps you need? And that was like 2001. And I ended up publishing the book myself because I figured I've, again, kind of always been entrepreneurial and just wanted to learn it. And, got that on Amazon, and one book led to the second book, which led to another book. And, then BrianMadden.com, I launched around the same time. The interesting thing about BrianMadden.com is, and I wrote a little bit about this in the eulogy for it, which is on my LinkedIn. There was no blogs in that day for corporations.
No.
And I'm not saying there was no tech blogs. There was no blogs for adults. Like, that was just not a thing. And so when I started that blog, I knew nobody. I had heard of a blog, but we thought that's something that like teenagers did to write about. It's like when Twitter first came out and you're like, why would anyone use Twitter? I don't care how good your hamburger was. Which I'm still unclear why people use Twitter who aren't like using it for work, if I'm being honest. The blog, like, there wasn't blogs. Like when I had the BrianMadden.com website, I had to write my own blog engine. Like, that's how early it was. Like, there were no blogs. And it just kind of grew and grew, and one thing led to another. And, then we did Bri for, like, it all kind of started bit by bit, right? Like, I wrote the book that I wanted to read that didn't exist. I created the website with content that I wanted to read. I didn't want to read the press release or just have like a reposting of news. I wanted some actual analysis on stuff. And those who know me know I have opinions. What? And at that time, I had been like doing the Citrix thing for quite a while, and I've written a couple of books, and so I did the blog, and then same with conference. I've made Bri for it. Just kind of one thing led to another, and all of a sudden, bam! Now it's 2020, and I started in '95. Like, how have I been doing this for 25 years? Right. That's the sort of the short version.
So I'm starting to sense a theme already. It's really that whole question of, well, what I want is not here. How do I make it here? Do I wait for someone else to do it, or do I just do it? How did that work in your obviously you say you're pretty entrepreneurial, but I mean, what's your thought process actually look like?
As a matter of fact, I just had someone point this out to me like 2 weeks ago, where they said, like, you talking to me, like, you've always been good at having like a vision of what you want and then working backwards and sort of building it. And that's happened with various homes that I've lived in where I like gutted them and rebuilt. That happened with, some of my non-IT work is I like pinball, and there's people building pinball machines, but it was all kind of very hodgepodge. So about 5 years ago, I wrote this open source pinball framework that you can use if you want to build your own pinball machine. And it's the same kind of thing where I was like, well, this is ridiculous. It should be Like, why is there all stuff? Most pinball machines are the same. It should be like a text configuration file, and you sort of set it all up, and just works. That didn't exist, so I wrote that. I mean, there's a lot of people working on it right now, and it took 5 years. It was not to be so flip about it, but that has always kind of been the thing. And to be honest, that's a lot of what my role is at VMware, because I joined VMware. You know, I'm kind of talking out of order here a little bit, but you know, I did BrianMadden.com till 2016. It took a couple years off. Then I wanted to, well, I didn't want. I had to work again because like money for life, whatever. But you know, and I didn't want to do I didn't want to do another website. There was a blog because I had done that already, and it was like that. I mean, it was not a bad job, but there was no like a problem. You know, sort of the engineer mindset, I guess. Like that problem had been solved. I don't want to refigure that out again. So, and looking at the vendors, I thought VMware had a good plan. I didn't really think they're that good at telling their story, and I thought maybe I can help with telling a story. And you know, I had some friends there, and talking to Sean Bass, who's the CTO, who we've all known forever, also, and another but 20-year friend and stuff. And Sean said, come join my team. But even that is kind of like, well, why can't everything? It's the same thing, like getting everything out there. Like, well, here's the vision for how everything could fit. Like, what if Workspace ONE fit together like this would be perfect. Why can't we do that? And they're like, that's awesome. It's like 79 million hours of dev work. So like start to prioritize and start to pick. And obviously I'm not like king of features picking at VMware. So like I have a seat at the table along with dozens of very smart people, and we're all trading around. There's a lot that kind of goes on. So this is like the ultimate, because a lot of stuff I've done in my life have been like just me, right? Like I made BrianMadden.com, I made Brive Forum, I made the book publishing, I made the pinball software. I can't make Workspace ONE at VMware, right? Like it's getting, I don't know how big we are in EUC, thousands of people, I guess, right? And how do we all kind of get aligned and that sort of thing? So this has been like the ultimate building project for me, because my little role is to like, it's like building a house, and there's all these workers, and I'm walking in like trying to be useful. Like I don't want to be that guy who's like, that nail should be over there. Nope, that nail's not spaced right. I don't want to be that guy. But I also don't want to roll in and start like, nailing things up. And they're like, you clearly have never done roofing before. So it's kind of fun to like sort of be in there and like figure out where I can help and not get in the way. And that's what my job is now.
Well, I love sometimes when we talk about like, just the whole concept of, okay, so we have multiple skills that multiple people have, and realizing how that looks. And for you're realizing, telling the story is something that I'm good at because I've been practiced at it for so long. Why don't I just do that over here? It's nothing short of brilliant. And that's really what we should all be striving for, is to really work within our actual strengths, not what other people tell us our strengths are, or we feel is like the gap we should be in, but actually living in that strength.
Well, let me tell you something, and maybe you cover this in your book, because obviously I haven't read it yet. I just got it yesterday, and I was like fake reading it earlier, because you were very polite with the answer to my earlier question, where you basically said it's in the book. If you read the book, you'll know the answer. But I'll tell you what. Okay, so like a lot of us, I think I've had a lot of like sort of mental and emotional and philosophical breakthroughs this year. I don't have kids. I'm not in a relationship. I work at home like all of us do now. And so like, a lot of spare time this year to sort of like work on and like improve ourselves. Right. And I spent a lot of time this year thinking about, like just life and philosophy and happiness and content and fulfillment and all that sort of thing. Yeah. And I started to look at all the work I did at BrianMadden.com. I'm like, let me blog, let me podcast, let me do, whatever. And then I come over to VMware to, like, at first I'm kind of like, just let me do the same thing. Like I like blogging. But it turns out I don't like blogging at VMware. At least I don't like what I've been doing. And what I mean by that, and no one's approving what I'm saying, but like, it's more of, it's just, when I was at BrianMadden.com, I was like, I want to help you. Like the reason I'm writing a blog is trying to help people, understand some issue. Like, here's what the vendor said. Yeah. Here's what you need to know. Right. Well, a lot of vendor blogs are sort of, hey, we've got this product coming out. Here's the announcement about it and what the new features are. So that is not fun. I mean, like writing it is fine, but it's not like, that's not fun for me. And I was like, wow, am I bored of blogging? Do I not like blogging? And then I realized I'm looking at this wrong. Blog is not the thing, right? Like I didn't like BrianMadden.com because I liked being a blogger. I like Madden.com because I liked helping people, like educating people and like filling in the cracks and that sort of thing. And so I realized, now unfortunately, I only realized this about 2 months ago. I wish I would have realized it, and I've been at VMware almost 3 years. No complaints. I wish I realized this in month 2, not month, 32. But I kind of realized that, to get that back at VMware, what I need to start blogging on is more of like when I'm talking to customers and analysis and like the issues and what we're thinking about and perspectives on things, as opposed to sort of the corporate mouthpiece, which, to be very clear, no one asked me to be the corporate mouthpiece. I sort of accidentally just started like, oh, this is here, this is here, this is here. But my point is I think as I'm getting older in this year, and this is to bring this train back around to your point you're making, it's important for us to figure out what we actually like, but really to break everything down to its constituent parts and see what it is. Like blogging is not what I like. Like helping people is what I like. And that goes to the point of the storytelling, because I realized that over the years I became a very competent storyteller. And I realized that VMware, that was something that could really add value, because when Sean was talking about VMware's vision before I joined 3 years ago, I was like, how does no one know about this? And it's like, well, Mr. Storyteller, here's where you come in. And so, like figuring out when like, okay, well, here's what we're doing, here's what we're doing, here's what we're doing. Like, how do you communicate this? How do you convince people that, to be on your side, and that why you're doing what you're doing is important, and that, that they want to be on team VMware, like that kind of thing. And so I look at that as my job, and that's really fun, really, really fun. So when I think about that kind of stuff, it gets really interesting. And by the way, I don't even care sort of that my topic is EUC. I talk about SmartNICs and Project Monterey as much as I talk about EUC nowadays, because I just love it. And the actual act of like telling a story about something being awesome. I'll talk about like why this mug is awesome, or why the ground are awesome. I'll talk about anything being awesome. That's what I want to talk about, is awesome stories. And if it happens to be EUC, so be it.
Yeah, I love that it's part of the toolkit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
By the way, storytelling, like there's that book Resonate by Nancy. I don't know how her last name's pronounced. Duarte, something like that. Duarte. The book is called Resonate, required reading for every professional human. It's just about how to package a story, how to tell a story. And it doesn't matter if you're on stage. It doesn't matter if you're in a meeting with a PowerPoint. It doesn't matter if you're working at AWS with your 6-page memos. It doesn't matter if you're just in a private meeting trying to talk to someone. Knowing how to tell a story and like weave a narrative, I think is very, very important. And I would put that as like a required reading, kind of like at the level of like the Dale Carnegie, like How to Win Friends and Influence People, like that level of fundamental reading that every professional human should read for sure. Nancy Duarte, Resonate.
Yeah.
Also, just do this.
This is really good. JD says, sounds like Brian found his why, not content just for content, but content stories that help. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it's so hard to. What do I want to say? Like, what your why is very misleading, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's early. Gosh, think about dating. When you're dating someone and you're young, like what's important to you? Like, what are the qualities? Think about when you were 20 and you're trying to date someone, what was important to you as qualities in another person you're dating. Now think about in 40, way different. And I would argue that 40 is like more true to you about what's actually important. Like, you realize what is actually important in human you want to spend your life with, not like, well, I want her to drive a Jetta and wear glasses. Like, what? Those are like on my list in my 20s for sure. Ridiculous.
Yeah, that's, I think back when I was younger, career-wise, personal-wise, it's like, what the heck was I thinking when I did this, or that? And
but we didn't know, like, we didn't understand.
It is true. You gain wisdom, and having an 18-year-old has really pounded that into my head, because he's very much like me at 18, and it's insane that it's you can't get through to them, right? It's you can't convince them that the world is round. It's no way. They just they disagree. They're hard-headed, and I think I said this before. I actually called my dad like earlier this year, last year, whatever it was, and I said, "Man, I apologize. I understand what you went through with me now, and I am so sorry."
Oh my God.
Dude, I was at the doctor today early, just the annual checkup, and I made some comments to the woman taking my blood, and I was like, oh my god, I'm my dad. Like, it's just it's weird, Jeff, because you and I sat in a boat in Paris.
Oh yeah,
and talked about your like 1-year-old and how crazy it was to have a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
So that was like in 2004, apparently.
was that the 2000s? I thought it was late. Oh yeah, it would be. Yeah.
I went back and looked at photos.
See, I'm old and dementia setting in, so I don't remember years.
Oh yeah, so I remember meeting you, but I was wrong about the year for sure. But I went back to my photos and found it. It was that first pub forum in Paris.
Yep.
And we did like the cruise on the river.
And
like visit the Eiffel Tower and that kind of stuff. So
very romantic.
And Alex took us all out in Paris. Remember, in Paris, took us out for pizza.
And we went to McDonald's also at one point. And I remember him walking up right to the cashier and just starting right off with English. And he was like, his native language was Russian. He was living in Germany at the time. But I feel like that's why we get the bad rap, because everyone assumes everybody speaking English must be an American. And but
is this the Russians are interfering with that early?
But yeah, those events were awesome, and that was it was cool because one of the things that's changed in our industry quite a bit over the years is we were so obscure and so niche back in those days, and like. People today are like, oh, VDI is still pretty niche, and like the Citrix or VMware, like UC, like that stuff is like a pretty niche kind of thing. But it's like, you think it's niche now? You should have done this in '98. It was crazily like obscure back then. I mean, half the people didn't even believe it worked as a concept, and the other half did not get what you were saying, like at all. They're like just no concept of what you're describing with these thin clients and that kind of thing. So that's what we had to do. There was no blogs, there was no Twitter, there was no Slack or these. It was the email distribution lists, like listservs, and books, and getting together conferences. That's how we did it back in the day.
Yeah.
Which
and that was a great. I mean, obviously it's before Alex took it professional, right? Made it into an actual conference, and that was the best thing about that is I knew people there. From like the Citrix forums, things like that. Had never seen them, had never talked to them. When Alex actually convinced me to go over, I was like, what the hell am I getting myself into? Am I going to be kidnapped when I land and take, I had no idea. I had no idea who these people were. And, and it turned out like that was a critical moment. The one thing I do remember, Brian, is Alex was so excited because you were coming and you just got like the MVP jacket or something like that. And he was excited that you were going to bring that.
Alex always really, really, really liked Microsoft, the company, like he really, really liked them. It was funny because I dealt with in those days, like a lot of us did, some pretty major imposter syndrome, which by the way, I wrote a book before I had the website, right? So like dipping my toe into the world was via Jim Kensig's list server, the thin list, right? So this is an email distribution list and you subscribe to it. There's like 4,000 people on that list, but very active, probably 40, 50 emails a day, like very, very active.
Easily.
And I was answering questions there and like feeling like I kind of knew what I was doing. And because I was working for a consulting company, I was kind of doing Citrix full time. I wasn't like someone who was doing Citrix and also Exchange and all these other kinds of things. I was doing, like I said, SMS and Citrix, but there's a lot fewer Citrix people in the world in that era. And so the Citrix was more of a unique talent and that became what I was doing. But actually putting it out there in a book I was like, there can't be, like I'm writing this stuff is worthless, right? This is worthless. Like everyone knows this, right? And then you give it out to people and they're like, well, this is great. This is great. And so it took some baby steps, but then to go to something like a pub forum, I'm like, these are like the heroes of the world. I can't hang with them. And then it kind of comes baby step. And then, next book, next kind of whatever, you sort of eventually get past that. But it was tough, man, in those early days, like to like I was confident, but still very scared that at any moment someone in the audience is going to be like, you clearly know nothing and should just go home and go back to the help desk.
You didn't spend a lot of time in the Netherlands then, I guess.
Actually,
Oh
we
gosh.
had a lot of Dutch at that pub forum.
By the time I spent a lot of time there, I was confident enough that the Dutch directness was not off-putting.
Right on. Actually, let's dive a little bit more into that imposter syndrome, because I know there's plenty of people watching. It's not something that they're necessarily going to put up in a chat and say, "Gosh, I struggle with imposter syndrome too." That's not necessarily something that will come up. But I'm kind of curious what kind of things you would say to people that are kind of in this space. Dennis agrees with me, by the way. It says yes as far as this question. What would you say to someone who is just convinced that they are just not anything significant, that they don't have anything to contribute, and to do so would just be, just
the easiest thing to do is to get reinforced, like positive reinforcement in like tiny little pieces. So if imposter syndrome is a feeling, right? So feelings come from, feelings cannot be fixed with logic, right? Like if you're worried about something bad happening, you can't be like, oh, the chances of that are not high, don't worry. It's like, oh, let me just turn off my worrying then. Thank you, science. It doesn't work that way. So anyone telling you, no, you got it, you're good, you'll be okay, that does not help at all. Don't seek that out. Don't try to give that to people. What was good for me was sharing with the little people, like this book I did. I was like, well, I think I want to write a book. Before I start, like, here's the topics and like what I want to cover. And so I think I did this on the thin list. Even we can probably find it in the archives. I sent it to like, hey guys, hey everyone on this list, I'm thinking about writing a book. Do you think there's value in that? I want to cover this. And then people are like, oh my God, that'd be awesome. That would be like, yeah, you think about this, about this. So at that point, do I know how to make a book? Of course not. Do I qualify to make a book? Of course not. But my first baby step is, I think I want to write a book. Yeah. And it's like, no, that's dumb. Who are you? Whatever. Like, but you can say, oh, I want to write a book. Hey, it's a good idea. Okay, next step. Hey, I want the chapter outline. What do you think? Someone's like, I would read this book. When can I buy it? Okay, great. Next step. And so the same thing you can do with if you have a presentation to give. Write an outline. Like I'm a big believer. Again, I go story based for presentations. So I first write the outline and then kind of get the outline of story flow down before I even start creating slides. So if I'm like, I want to give a presentation, forget if you have the skills, forget the content, just be like, I want a presentation on this. Here's my outline, and circulate it to some people you like before you put too much effort into it, and just say, hey, here's a presentation I'm thinking of creating. Do you think this is a good presentation? Like, this is good content that people would be interested in? And then that gives you the confidence of like a little tiny baby step. And then maybe you can start working out your narrative and fleshing that out some more. And then again, share it with some friends. And that's a good narrative, or that's a good confidence booster. Then, if you've never done a presentation before, start recording yourself. And holy moly, anyone who says, oh, I can't watch myself is going to be a bad presenter forever. You have to watch. It is going to cringe. You are going to, like, I'm watching these things. Oh my gosh, dude, stop saying I'm saying this to myself, but I'm watching. Holy moly, do you know any words? And it's, here's the thing. People will go to Toastmasters because that's how embarrassed they are of watching themselves on video.
Right.
And they'll just have other people watch them, and then they get their reaction second degree. I feel like, Toastmasters is great. You don't need to do it. Literally just push record and give your spiel and watch it. And the thing is, at the end of the day, if there's like one sort of, I feel like Barney on How to Make Money. I've got one rule, which he says about 50 times, but my one rule at the end of the day is no matter what content you're creating, whether it's a paper you're writing, a blog post, a podcast, flipping around, a presentation, no matter what you're creating, think of your audience and imagine it through your audience members' eyes. Who are they? Why are they there? Why do they care about your presentation or your content you're creating? Are they going to be interested? And if it's some presentation where it's just kind of like, oh, ho hum here. Like if you're bored, they're bored, right? It has to be like, think about what is actually valuable to them, and only put good stuff out there. If that means you're not blogging every single day because you only have 2 decent posts per week to write, then only write 2 posts per week. And no matter what it is, if you put yourself in the seat of the audience member, no matter what, and create content for that person, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. The other sort of thing, like that I just want to. This kind of fits in and kind of does. I just want to say this. Looking back on my career and everything, it is hard work.
Yeah.
So I've written this before and mentioned this in a couple other podcasts over the years, but my buddy Mike and I, you know, we'll he's the same age as me. We'll sit on the couch and like, you know, play Tetris, like old school Tetris, head to head and stuff like that, and just be talking about getting older and everything, and like our bodies are kind of hurting and stuff like that. And but we talk about, man, if I knew what I knew now and could like teleport back to my 20-year-old self, like with this brain, holy moly, look out world, how awesome would my life be, right?
Right.
But then I realized I couldn't do it because
Wouldn't be the same.
I could not work that hard. If knowing what I know today, I never would have done BrianMadden.com. Right. I never would have done Bri Forum. I never would have done the books. I never would have done Mission Pinball Framework. I never would have done most stuff I've done in my life, because you have to work so hard, and it's a hustle. I mean, like just like every day, like it's a lot of work. Yep. And especially me, when I did it, remember there was no blogs. Like I had to hustle as hard as I did, and I was cutting edge of self-publishing and Amazon Advantage program and creating a conference and like all this sort of stuff. Like this was all not as common. There was not the tool. Like again, I had to write my own blogging engine for it. Like I had to really work. So my point is, I had it though easier because there was less noise in the world, and even in the easy world. That was so much work. That's why I mentioned, like, DJ, what you're doing with these books, you guys in this THRIVEcast, what Johan van Amersfoort is doing. Like, I can't hang with y'all because it's so much work. So a lot of people have I've got a lot of opinions. And so some people like me and some people don't, and some people think that I'm legit and some people think I'm just like a poser. And that's all fine. Obviously you have to have thick skin if you're going public with stuff, but I will say that I think no one will argue that I didn't work hard in my career. And I'm working way less hard now because I have a job that has a W-2 paycheck than I was the independent person creating all that kind of stuff. So my advice to anyone who's wanting to do this sort of thing is like, you know, the baby steps to get confirmation on like, you know, what you're doing is good and everything, but be prepared. Like you want to get somewhere in your career, you can, but it's work. It's a lot of work.
And I think keeping in mind too, that we think we tend to just see the end product in mind, which is good. It's good to visualize that sort of thing, but we can't decry the steps in the middle. You know, it's like I always say, you won't really rise to the occasion. You won't just get out there and start a blog and get a bunch of attention. It's just not going to work that way. Trust me. You know, even the blogs that I have done never really have gotten anywhere. It's just not that kind of a thing. But you'll only rise to your level of preparedness. And so the more we do, the higher up we go and the more we're ready to do. So what you said about coming back in time and would I do it again? Probably not, because that's a different level of preparation that you weren't at then, and so that would look very intimidating. You know? Yeah,
and it's also you know, as you get older, you learn how to work like smarter instead of harder, which is that old sort of saying. And there's a lot of stuff too. Like you learn what's good enough. That was a big problem for me. I'm absolutely a perfectionist, and so learning. You know, as I've gotten older and started to realize, like, you know, you don't want to sort of like, you don't want to quality suffer and like phone it in kind of, you know, like I still spent 10 minutes picking my background just for this webcast. Right. But at the same time, you know, sort of learn like what's important and what's less important and like what to worry about and what not to worry about. So I guess that's the same thing as, you know, I don't know. That probably applies in life, kind of in general. But
no, but I think you're absolutely right. You do learn what's important, what isn't. You know, and you know, if if you went back and, with everything today, you wouldn't be the same person from like that early point on, because it's all of these experiences, good, bad, in between, that have shaped us into what we are today. And that just simply can't be recreated. Even knowing all that stuff, you wouldn't turn out the same at all.
Yeah. It's funny. I was, I think about a lot of these young people that get investments, and I was kind of like, I had one point where I was like, man, if where was someone to give me my $100,000 investment to launch Madden.com in 2003? And then I was like, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have worked, because it would be someone else's money. I wouldn't have that fire lit under me for man. You remember, Jeff? Dude, we had Brian Matt. So Jeff, you gave I made this training class. It was like a Citrix master class in the mid 2000s, and we were doing this a 5-day class. It was like $3,000 to attend. It was an independent Citrix master class, and they got to be so popular that you were teaching them. Sean Bass was teaching them also, and I mean, even in 2007 or 8, there were some times when we're like, okay, we here's your rate for teaching, your subcontract rate. Like, we can pay you half now and half after the class because these students haven't paid, and I don't have the money in the checking account. So my point is, even after the company like Malto Briforms and established, it's like I had lots of weeks where I skipped my own paycheck. And it's like, but that really, they say nothing sharpens the mind, nothing focuses the mind like the hangman's noose. And like the fact that 5 years into starting that company, I was still having to skip paychecks. That meant I was not ever coasting in terms of oh, this is great. The machine is rolling forward and we can just let it go on autopilot. That doesn't happen when it's your own company. I also, by the way, realized, and as we all, the three of us anyway, realized that I had enormous privilege in my life. I'm white, I'm male, I was born in America in the 1970s to middle-class family. So I got as hard as I worked, I also had a smooth road, relatively speaking, in front of me, where I was basically able to show up to some little law firm, I'm your IT consultant to fix your network server when I was 18, and they let me in the door. There's a lot of that, which I really, really appreciate as well.
Absolutely.
And I think you bring up a good point too, because we're so old, and really kind of pre-Amazon, when you were writing your book, not only did you have to figure all that out about how to lay it out and write it and get it in, you kind of mentioned, you did the self-publishing part as well, and had to figure out that end of it. And that was the part that impressed the hell out of me, is that you were able to get in there, figure it out. And don't get me wrong, because the book was awesome. I mean, I used it extensively, and I know a lot of people did. And you were right. It was the only thing that was out there really covering Citrix in a non-biased way. Probably was the only Citrix book out there. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, when you look at that stuff, and you look back at your career and all the things that you have done, how much of it is you've literally put things together, like you were talking about the pinball tape, pinball machine, it's.
And the cool thing about all this sort of stuff is that, you mentioned the word putting together. I may be the first one to put things together in this exact way, but I'm not exactly blazing trails down the whole world. Like, for example, how did I learn how to self-publish? I bought books on self-publishing. And then, okay, they recommend you need page layout software. You should use Aldus PageMaker as it was at the time, not Word, because here's why, and here's how you do an index, and here's how you find a printer, and here's how you do all of those individual steps. Yeah. And I had, at the time, I had no money, and I wanted to do the book as a way to make money. And I realized there's a lot of margin that is in the publisher. And so what value is a publisher really adding besides doing the layout and all that kind of stuff? Well, they're doing all the marketing and all that sort of thing. I'm like, this is a tech book. It has the word Citrix in the title. All I need to do is get it on Amazon. I don't care about stores at all. Just if it's on Amazon, it's fine. And this is 20 years ago even, right? And even then I was like, Amazon is fine. Now, what's funny is the books came up before blogs, right? There was no information on Citrix other than their product manual and a book from the bookstore. I sold. Are you ready for this? So DJ, you're writing books now. You're gonna cry when you hear this. My first 3 books. There's 2 books on Metaframe XP and 1 book on Terminal Server, which I co-wrote with Ron Oglesby, who is now one of my coworkers at VMware. Those first 3 books together sold more than 100,000 copies. That's insane. Yeah. That's insane. You know why? Because it was 2000. Not because I was so awesome as an author.
Right.
It's because there was no blogs, there was no YouTube, there was no podcasts about stuff. There was no any of that sort of thing. It was when you read the manual and get the end, the only place for more information is a book. And of course, Citrix, there was no competition for Citrix in those days. It was very obscure. At the time, Citrix Metaframe XP was new. My book was on Metaframe XP, but it was also, again, not just a manual. It was like an implementation guide and kind of real world. And it was crazy back then. It was really crazy, like how many books you could sell, because books was all that the world had. The VDI Delusion, I think we sold like 6,000 copies of, 15 years later, maybe 10,000, something like that. A tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. Because of course now, like, who reads books anymore? I mean, I do, but
and that's the funny thing about it. And actually, this is a good point to bring up of a couple things. One is that if you go to methodologybook.com, that's a shortcut to the page. It'll tell you more about Just Do This. It's really good. I mean, I would love to say it's going to sell 100,000 copies. I don't know. It probably will, but it takes time. It's one of those things. It's a long.
Your book is cool because it's more timeless, right? Because I did Metaframe XP, including feature release 1. And then FR2 comes out and we're like, hang on. This book, I can imagine, is as valuable 10 years from now as it is today.
And actually, that's exactly why I wanted to take my time with it and make sure that I actually chose a lot of my language very carefully to make sure that I was saying, if there was something that was kind of time keyed, it was like, okay, this is the way it was in 2007. That's when I was writing the book, or 2017, I should say. And there was a book called Perennial Seller by, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Ryan Halliday. And that was kind of the impetus of saying, do things that matter in the long term. And that really hit me in the heart, saying, you know what, it's going to be better for me to do something that's matters in the long term, that's going to be building up people where they need to be built up, not just right now, but always. And that's all. I made this decision way before a lot of the things that have been happening lately have been, having happened. I mean, I think there's going to be a fresh wave of, consultants and things like that out there. But also for, like people that are going into managed services and things like that. There's a lot of an influx of people that are in IT services and don't necessarily resonate with some of the things that are out there right now. Not saying they're not good, but there's some tried and true strategies that I think will stand the test of time here. The funny thing is, like you mentioned the course thing or the presentations thing, and I'm actually in the beta process of a course right now that is dealing with how to do assessments, and the second module is on presentations. And I was actually saying the same kind of thing. It's like it's important to practice, but you don't need to like do complicated things. But the more you can build up that level, it's possible. Right now, that's only available if you click through and order the book. It's only available as an add-on right now. Later, it'll be available, but right now, just to let everybody know that is something you can get. But right now, you can only get it ordering the book direct from me. You can't get it from Amazon and that sort of thing. That's the fun part about that.
Like anything else, you got to practice those skills or else. I mean, I remember my first ever speaking was at the First Bri Forum. Holy crap. I remember the time and effort I took to get that comfort level to be at least be able to get on the stage and not choke. And it's, like we've been saying, we sound like, old grumpy old men. Back in my day, we didn't have this stuff. We didn't have the cameras that we could get cheap and watch ourselves do it. But I was bugging friends left and right, man. Yeah. Hey, let me present this to you. Like, what is it on? Is it blah, blah. What? Just shut up and listen.
Yeah. Let me tell you my one rule for presentations. and that is you. It's so important also to recognize that a presentation is just one person sort of communicating to another. But what tools you use and how you tell a story is going to vary greatly depending on who you're talking to and what you're trying to do. Or trying to like convince them on a recommendation, trying to get them to buy something, trying to like, let them know why they should allow you to date their daughter or whatever. And the thing is with it is that because with Word, you don't create a Word doc. You use Word as your tool to create a resume, a book, an implementation plan, a checklist, a recipe, different things, right? But yeah, when it comes to PowerPoint, they're like, hey, send me the PowerPoint. I'm like, PowerPoint's an app, not a document type. Like, what is this? Is this a project delivery where I'm walking you through like the results of the project, a technical design? Is this a project proposal where I'm showing you what we're going to do with the project? Is it a pitch where I'm trying to get you to pick me to do your project? And am I presenting to a conference room, to a large stage? If it's a large stage, is it a big screen behind me or is there tiny TVs on each side? Is it streamed? Is it not streamed? There's so many different options. And what template, like it always really irks me when someone's like, here is our PowerPoint template. I'm like, well, for what? They're like, our company. Like, yeah, but for what? Like again, like you don't say, here's our Word template. You must use this for everything. I'm like, what template? Is this like a book and a resume and a project plan of the same template? That's insane. Why would you only have one PowerPoint template? Even whether you use light or dark background, it changes whether you're in a big room that's dark or a small room that's light, all this kind of stuff. And so I think it's very important that like as you're looking on how to present and how to tell stories better and all that kind of stuff, you remember that PowerPoint is not always the right tool for things. Maybe a document, like maybe I just presented this very complex thing at work, this project that Ron and I had been working on for like almost a year. And it was a 23-page document, but we presented a presentation that was like 5 slides. And we presented these 5 slides, like walk through like the gist, and then emailed the document out afterwards. And they're like, okay, read this, rather than trying to take all the document and put it in the. So my point is you really have to think about what you're trying to do and realize that, you can't put the same template for everything. You can't use even PowerPoint for everything. And just use, right tool for right job, I guess.
Yeah. And I love that. Really considering your audience is super important. Actually, Dennis here live with us says, I remember how much my Dutch directness backfired when I presented to a German customer about what was wrong with their farm. And yeah, that considering your audience and that takes some development as far as, even considering like international things or etiquette and things like that. When we had Joe Schonk on a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking about that. That was what episode was that? That was episode 31. And we were talking about like how social skills have to develop. Well, it's the same kind of thing with presentations. You get by doing more of, but you get by getting better and being aware and wanting to change. Absolutely.
I think Mark Plattenberg brought it during the interview you had with him when I was out with the corona. He said that too. He said, I had to learn that when I email somebody in the US and I'm just being me and direct, they almost universally reply, what's wrong? Is there something wrong? What did I do wrong? He goes, so I've learned to put in like little, hey, how you doing? How's your life? Whatever. Hey, by the way, I need this. It's like, yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, Richard Palker says you don't have to be Dutch for that. I remember being alienated at a large bank customer because how I told them that their NDS client was causing the metaframe issues they were having. I was right.
I authorized that directness, right? Yeah. That was the end. Was that the Novell client or the Microsoft Novell client? Right? Remember those days? Yeah.
I do.
Gina chaining and all that. And
wish I didn't, but I totally do.
How many? In the DOS days, you had to do the auto exec and the config and getting all that stuff in the right order and figuring it out every time.
Oh gosh. And then making config menus. So like, do you want the CD-ROM drive or the sound card to work? You don't get both. And I'm like, oh, Monkey Island.
See, that's why I love you, Brian. Monkey Island right there, man. That's just
there's a documentary. Did you see the documentary on YouTube?
Yeah, the like kind of behind the scenes.
It's a YouTube documentary, came out last month. Fantastic. It was awesome.
If you want something interesting, go out to limitedrun.com or limitedrungames.com. They have a bundle you can purchase that has all the Monkey Island games and then a bunch of collectible stuff around it, like little Guybrush Threepwood statuette, which is like, oh my God, I gotta have that.
Fantastic. Yeah,
just crazy stuff. But
yeah,
so
that's the geek.
And give some love to. There's some discussion in the comments of someone claiming to be Dane Young, which I was skeptical as well. It's like, is this actually Dane Young? Because disappearing off the map and all that. But apparently, it really is. Because he says, I'm really disappointed that Brian isn't rebuilding Workspace ONE from scratch. I had much higher expectations.
Me too.
But to circle around back to that, Brian, what I wanted to mention, and I don't know how much involvement you had for Sean's presentation at VMworld this year, the virtual. But the one thing I noticed and I found very interesting, and it clicked in my head with some other stuff that I've been doing. There was so little talk about Vue, if any. I don't even remember hearing the word Vue come up.
We don't have a product named Vue, so that's why.
What's that?
You mean Horizon? We don't have a product named Vue. Do you mean Horizon?
Yeah, Horizon. Sorry,
that's probably why you didn't hear Vue.
No, but the fact that this stuff is moving to the background and just becoming a tool, and you've got the front end that's aggregating all these different methods for users to get access to their resources. And I found that very fascinating, and it goes along with my commoditization of remoting.
Yeah.
But and that's why it clicked, was like, yeah, even VMware, and even to a certain extent, Citrix is going down that same path where virtual apps and desktops is starting to shift to the background, and putting more of the front end, taking all the back end pieces and putting them in essentially into a single spot. So for access.
Yeah, I think you can see from us. I say me, Gabe, and Jack. Like we were working together at brandman.com and Tech Target, and now we're all together at VMware EUC. And we wrote that book together, The VDI Delusion, back in 2012. So that's almost 9 years ago. And the early, that whole book, we called it the VDI Delusion because we felt that if people thought that VDI was the future of EUC, that was delusional. Nothing wrong with VDI. VDI is one method to deliver one type of application in desktop for certain use cases. But too much VDI is no good, but also not using any VDI is no good. And so that's the last chapter of that book, because this isn't really what happened, but a lot of people thought that we just spent most of that book dumping on VDI. And then we thought, well, the last chapter we have to say, well, if it's not just VDI, what is it? And we described something which is very much like Workspace ONE now. Now, I'm not taking any credit for that. A lot of people have been talking about it, and all we said is there has to be some kind of platform that just does us all. And for VDI to succeed, it needs to be demoted in people's minds to not a thing. We don't want VDI to be something that's weird and different. This is why I always fight against the year of VDI. And I've never said any year is the year of VDI, as much as everyone, now people say it's just to get under my skin. Like, Brian, I remember when you said that. And I'm like, no, you don't. But because I felt if someone said this is the year of VDI, that would put that would steer too many people towards VDI, when we need to look, there's lots of cases where I want a physical Windows machine. I want a physical Mac. I want an iOS. I've got web applications. Maybe I want a VM to go on my BYO machine, whatever. There's lots of different use cases. None is right and wrong. Just like Ford is never going to make only one model of car, it's just, there's different cars for different use cases and pros and cons and bigger, smaller, efficiencies, cost, all that sort of stuff. And so to me, this has been a story I've been telling since I joined VMware. I really, really downplayed Horizon because I don't want Horizon to be like a big thing. It just fits into overall EUC platform. And even back in 2018, when I joined, I was drawing like that Lightboard video I had with Johan. Horizon was a little tiny box in the corner that took up 5% of the screen, and everything else was, the unified endpoint management, all the intelligence, all of the, employee experience focused stuff, the analytics, the trust network integration, the zero trust security, all of that. There's no story to tell in VDI. VDI is dumb and boring because it just works, and who cares? And like, yes, we can all screw up an environment, spectacularly. But like at the end of the day, who cares about VDI? It's great. And like, we want to use it. It's like, who cares? I shouldn't say like, who cares about VDI? It's like, who cares about plumbing? Like, people do. But it's just there. You take it for granted. Let's focus on like where interesting things are happening, and that's more about how you get employees remotely from whatever random devices they have, and integrating like all the handoff between like one of these great demos we did at VMworld last year was where we had a Windows 10 machine. It was a local laptop, so running Windows 10 like Workspace ONE managed. And the user has an email. They get like a Skype call or whatever. They click on the thing. Skype launches and crashes immediately. And it's like, this application stopped responding. Then the Workspace ONE agent pops up, and we're like, oh, we see that Skype has crashed. Don't worry, we've automatically filed a help desk ticket for you. And click here to relaunch, but it relaunches the published version of Skype as a published seamless application out of Horizon. So now, because the local one won't run, but the user's call is still the user's call. And so it's like, hey, here, get you up and running on Horizon. We'll figure out why it's not working in the background for real later on. And there's a lot of other ways you can take that. Like, hey, if I have your Workspace ONE is managing my device, if I have an iPhone in my pocket and my Skype is not working on my laptop, just be like, no problem, we'll pop open on your Skype. And just it's there. We know it. We know from location. It's in your pocket. There's a lot of things you can do like that. And VDI by itself, it's got marginal utility, but how interesting is it really? But when you look at VDI into the bigger picture of the UC estate, that becomes very interesting. And that's what we've been focusing on at VMware over the past few years, and certainly what I've been focusing on since I've been there. And if there's anything that I, have been known with at VMware, like I'm known for a lot of things, like including like being like that guy. But I'm talking about, let's demote VDI in our eyes to be just a little plug-in to the platform. Now, I don't know what VMware makes in revenue in VDI. It's got to be like a lot. So you scare sales reps when you start talking like that. But I'm like, no, it's a platform approach. That's what we want to do.
I mean, I think I want to bring out and Dennis, you're watching here with us. So if this question isn't exactly the way you wanted to ask it, just let us know. But he was asking in our LinkedIn page, which by the way, you can go to at thrive-it.com/li to get to our LinkedIn page. But you've been active in EUC for more than a couple of weeks, and you've seen technology come and go, but have there been fundamental changes in the way we operate EUC, and should we change them?
Ironically, I do not think there have been fundamental changes in the way that we operate EUC in the past 25 years. However, I would like to see that change. And I think we're starting to get there, but we're not there yet. And let me give you a couple examples of things I think the way it could be. Right now, even within VMware, like the way you make an image for VDI is separate from the way you prepare an image for Windows 10, right? So if you get a Windows 10 laptop, you can do Workspace ONE provisioning. You can do direct factory provisioning from Dell or Lenovo or HP and have it built in the factory. You put like what packages you want in there, all that kind of stuff. And it's the modern provisioning, right? We've got autopilot, we've got the out of box experience. All these great modern ways to manage Windows 10 until you use VDI, and it's like, oh well, download the image file, make your gold master, like sysprep it, like seal it, and I'm like, wah, wah. I thought that was going away. So we have some work to do because in my mind, I'm like, look, man. If you're Windows 10, be Windows 10. You make your Windows 10 image, then like let the system figure out, hey, like here's a Windows 10 that is used for this group. If we need to push out your device, if we need to push it down as a VM, if we need to like give you a session out of it, out of our cloud or the public cloud or wherever. And you can see that happening with applications too. Like how many ways are there to package an application? MSIX, AppV, AppX, app volumes, ThinApp, native install into a VM that I'm delivering via Horizon publish app, right? Which one's right? again, like what's better, a pickup truck or a car or a semi truck? Like all of them, we need them all. But I don't want to package all those things separately, right?
Right.
I think if you look at like where DevOps is going, how that's evolving, like IT operations, and like look at some of these more, like we just bought Salt, with Salt Stack, look at like Chocolatey and like some of these kinds of things where it's kind of like a little bit of the desired state configuration, or like, you know, infrastructure is code, or code is infrastructure, whatever. Like I think that is where we need to be going with an EUC. That has absolutely hit the dev world, the app developer world. It's starting to hit the IT infrastructure world now in these next, you know, right now. I think in these next few years, if you look ahead for 3 years from now, that is going to be one of the big changes. It's specifically to the question of how we operationalize, how we operate EUC. I think there's very, very big disruptions in there, because if you actually get your IT where with your EUC estate where it's operationalizable, that's a Ron Oglesby word, then there is, you can configure it, you know, via this infrastructure, via code, whatever. Now all this intelligence BS, which let's say, that's dashboard candy nowadays, right? It's all like, look at my charts and circles and stars, and this is compliant and not compliant. These people are happy and not happy. Like, okay, don't show me, just do it. Right. I don't need a dashboard. I do not want a dashboard. Do not tell me users are not happy. Just freaking make them happy. Fix it. Why are you telling me this? So as we get the infrastructure in place, then that will allow us to automate more with all this like smartness we have on this analytics in the back end. And that was when stuff is going to be awesome. Give us 5 years for that. Us, all the industry, give us 5 years. But that's what we're doing in 2025.
I think there's another side to that, though, in the 25 years. And DJ, I think we've talked about this. And Brian, I think you'd agree that when we first started, right, IT was still relatively young and you know, growing. When we did things for us, the administrator, and we pushed those out to the end users. That's how it worked. I think the big fundamental change that in EUC especially, it's not totally there, but it's about the user and the user being able to do their job. Mm-hmm. The user doesn't care Horizon, Citrix, WVD. They don't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They just want to do their job, get paid, and go home.
Yeah, get out of my way.
And yes, there's other requirements now, but we have to be able, to include the users I know, Ron, when I was at Unidesk, we had there was a customer, and I can't remember who it was. It was a university. They marketed it, this new rollout of their virtual desktops. They never ever used the word virtual, hyper. There were just words.
Right, what does that mean?
Never mentioned.
I don't care.
Yep. And the user acceptance was through the roof.
Well, one of the things we have to remember is the problem we're solving right now is many orders of magnitude more complex than the problem that we were solving when we began our careers in the 90s. I mean, now we're kind of saying any application, anytime, any device, anywhere, and secure and native productivity. People said, hey, Templeton said any in the 90s. It's like, well, yeah, but his any was converting my iPad into a Windows desktop. Like, that's not the any we're doing today, because if users do that, they're going to, revolt. The second thing, the big change for today is the whole, there's that flash in the pan of consumerization of IT. Call it what you want now, but the reality is that we IT professionals are competing with every single IT startup with a twinkle in their eye against our users, right? And, they don't like WebEx. Now they're using Zoom. Now they're using Skype. Now, okay, no one's using Skype, but now they're using FaceTime. They're using AHA. They're using all these different tools and figuring everything out. And if we don't provide the service they need, they can just go use Dropbox on their own, and just, who even expenses it? It's $12 a month. They'll just pay for it, not even tell anyone. So we now have a much more complex service we're trying to deliver to our users, while at the same time recognizing that if we waver for even a second, they're using some third-party tool and we're not even going to know about it. So it's a very different world now than when we began.
It very much is, but I think in the end, it's like Craig said. User expectations is that if you're going to take, basically, if you're going to take away their desktop, their physical desktop or whatever, they don't care about the desktop, that it's Windows, that it's whatever. They just want their applications and do their job. That's what they care about. And if you can't deliver those in an efficient manner, in the way they need to be able to do their job, we have failed as IT.
Yeah.
And that wasn't all, like I said, that wasn't always the case.
No.
Back in the 90s, early 2000s, it was just, we were the software guys. We were the guys implementing. We know what we're doing. So you just trust us, and now it's very much, and, I still see it where people go, admins on the back end, are like, well, no, this is what needs to happen for them to, it's like, no. Have you talked to your users? And that is incredibly important. If you people aren't talking to your end users about how they use their software, their processes, if you don't know that stuff and you're trying to put in something new, you're going to get screwed. You're going to screw over the company, the user, yourself.
And to speak to something that's going on and kind of in the live chat here, Dane's stirring up trouble again. So, that's why. The IT infrastructure and support teams hate DevOps for Windows endpoints because everything is always rapidly breaking when you touch it. And Dennis, of course, says you can't automate without automated testing. Otherwise, you're automating disaster. And that's actually the bigger point for me. And it kind of answers a question that was put up before about, if DevOps is kind of the right move, that sort of thing. And this is where I go with it. It's like, well, let's take a more pragmatic approach here. Instead of saying what works best for us, we need to be looking at what works best for them as users. Otherwise, what's the freaking point? They're just like you're saying, Brian, they're just going to go ahead and do something else. If we're so unstable and so bad at it that we're going to do other things, if we don't start with why we're doing this stuff, then we're just back on our island once again, handing down, here's the latest thing from IT, and that's why they hate us, folks.
Yeah, and that gets back to, this is another a very existential question. We've been asking ourselves this internally, right? Like, why do we exist? Like, why does VMware EUC exist? What problems are trying to solve? What problems are our customers trying to solve? We talk to our customers, but our customers are end users. What are they trying to solve? The interesting thing, back to the testing. I think maybe Dennis pointed that out. Is so back when I was doing the MPF, the Mission Pinball Framework software, So I started myself, right? I learned object-oriented programming in Python. I did it myself for 2 years. Then that attracted real developers over time, and they taught me how to actually develop properly, including test-driven development. So every time you add a new feature, you first write an automated test for it, and that test will fail because the feature doesn't exist. And then you fix it, and then you have these hundreds, maybe thousands of tests that are running, and then eventually, if people find bugs, you first write a test that fails to show that bug, and then you fix it. And then that way, every change you make, if it's something that broke something you wrote 7 years ago, it's it pops up when you're doing your testing. And every time you check in, it automatically runs a test before it goes live and everything. So all that continuous integration, test-driven development process, that's all available to us in IT operations management too. So you can do the same thing. Because Windows, I agree, is very, very complex. But dude, so is pinball, so is everything. There's a million little plugins and modules, and on this platform versus that platform, and this one changed here, and this one changed. It's everything's open source and changing every 35 seconds, and it's all complex. And so the cool thing though is you can kind of do these things where even if you have a whole desktop you're building with all this infrastructure as code on demand, you can have it go through and click start, run an email, test the email, click, run through here, make sure that's all going functionally, not crashing in the timeframes you want, and all that sort of thing. And only when that works then. So imagine if you actually had your business owners who could walk you through here's what we do in InDesign, and just click, show me what you do, and click this workflow flow through. I can sort of record that, and then every time I do something with InDesign to push out updates, it first has to run through that test, and if that test fails, you cannot push this out to users. So again, these are not things you implement overnight. A lot of these are philosophical changes. They require a lot of It is a what I want to call this. It's a way of thinking, right? It's a way of operation, going over to that model of thinking and model of deploying IT infrastructure. And again, we're just now getting this on the server side of things. It's going to be a little while before it gets on the desktop side, but I really think that this is pretty heavy, especially as things get more complex and users are all over the place. I think that way of thinking is going to be, big in the next 5 years or so.
And I think, we need better methods, of doing those updates, whether it's app updates, OS updates, because in the end, they should be non-intrusive to the end user. They should never know that Windows is updated, on our back end, not their desktops. But they shouldn't even care that Patch Tuesday is around the corner, those types of things. And the Windows, the OSs, right? Those are the hard pieces, I think, simply because when you've got like Windows that's been around for 25 years or 30 years, whatever it's been, Linux, less time around, but it's running into it too. As these things get older, and let's keep in mind, companies don't like change in a rapid fashion. So
Right.
Microsoft, how many APIs and all this other junk that they have to keep in the operating system to support those people that are still on Windows 2000 server running a mission critical application. And I think that I don't think people quite understand that with software. And software, you can say, look, here's the new version, we've got this, it can go in, and I know not all the time, but it'll replace the old one. Here you go. Yeah, we've made changes in how we develop it. Microsoft, the Linux, Apple is the only one that I've seen that can get away with such a thing. But in the end, Microsoft, Linux, they have to support apps that were years ago, that are way beyond end of life at this point.
Yep.
What's nice is if you have your environment that's all like been built on its own and like automated and everything, then you can have maybe dedicated VMs that are kind of locked down, where the VM is the container for this older application. And I got this VM, it's locked down, it's got this version of Windows, it's got that version of browser, it's got those plugins, and it just doesn't move. And I deliver that application remotely, via a Horizon session, one-to-one in this VM that is spun up automatically. Maybe I push the VM down to your machine, and run it locally, whatever that is.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying from the perspective of, there are things right now, if Microsoft or Linux and all that stuff, if they came out with a brand new OS, right? They said, okay, we're scrapping this and we've developed this new OS. You can take all of that into effect and build that, right? You could build it quicker than it would be to get Windows in a position for it to be DevOps properly. That's why that's why like the SMSs, the Intunes, all that stuff. Well, it's Windows that holds back a lot of this stuff, and that's not a knock on Microsoft.
No,
that's just the reality of the world.
I think I agree with Dane in the comments. He was talking about how a lot of the most sophisticated organizations are the ones that created their own variation of the chaos monkey in their environments without even knowing it. And that's kind of the other thing that I see, is that there's just so many legacy processes that just build on, and pretty soon you just have this mountain of pain. And trying to get through that, trying to introduce and having been a consultant for enough years and walking into companies that are thinking they're going to go agile, and they try to run against this, and next thing you know, there's utter chaos. Just like outages left and right, just like the worst possible things, because they just aren't there. Like they can't be there.
The thing is, there are plenty of customers who are just freaking nailing it, and they're doing everything right, and they have like an IT infrastructure as code, and they're just like, you've walked in a few of these environments and you're just like, I can't help you. This is amazing. So the fact that that exists means that it is possible. And so what we can do, my role as a vendor now who provides tools and services for people, is to try to figure out what elements of these environments that are run like in a super pristine way, what elements can we codify and bring into our platform that we sell, and to help get as many people as close to that Nirvana operating state as possible. So there's a million complexities in EUC. It's very it's near and dear to our users because it's their device. It's their device. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes into it. But these are all solvable problems. And of course, all the vendors have the same problems that all the customers have. Like there's a reason that, lift and shift is a thing. And we all the same. Again, our customers are all in the same business where they're all trying to move their business forward and they can't shut down for a year and retool all that kind of stuff. Just like we can't, I would love to be like, hey, no new versions of Workspace ONE for like 3 years. So we can like rebuild some things from scratch, but that request has been denied so far from me.
Yeah. And I got to disagree with you a little bit on like those processes. Yes, they're perfect at this point in time. Now, the problem with that is if the admins aren't capable of recognizing what needs to be changed as technology changes, that beautiful, perfect process today becomes the legacy process holding everything back tomorrow. And I've seen both. I've seen it where it's perfect. I've seen people insist we aren't going to change it because of this, and they'll have legitimate reasons. But you need to be open-minded that there's always improvements that can be made. Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow. But you got to keep the open mind that what's perfect today, especially in tech, is not going to be perfect tomorrow. And I think we DJ and I have kind of mentioned this before, but for a group of people that work in an ever-changing business, whatever you want to call it, technology changes at such a rapid rate, it's ridiculous. And I've seen IT people that are so resistant to change. I wonder how they thrive, how they keep going, because, it's like, you can't put, your foot down or, draw the line in the sand and say, that's it, we're done,
Well, that's fine though, because, it takes all types, and there are some people who are in the point in their careers, either because they want to or because they are lucky enough to, where they don't have to change. And they don't have, which is fine. And so I think a lot of this kind of stuff, like I want the vendors who I trust to have unrealistic expectations about what they can potentially do, right? Like I want to buy the car from the person who's going to change the world, right? Like I want my vendors to just have this vision of what they're building towards that is like, that's insane, go for it. Knowing that they're going to get as close as I can get as close as I can. But a lot of things, this goes back to like, if we can make things modular, look back to what Vision App was doing with their, that product back in like 20 years ago, where it was just, instead of having all our Citrix servers and Citrix images, it was like kind of big scripts, right? So if you do have this whole complex environment, you actually can deploy like a click to deploy off of one script. What was
it was like basically you hit
right?
checkboxes to what you wanted, and it would go grab them, push them down.
But the point is, as things get more complex,
around, but
if you're using that kind of thing, as it gets more complex, you can always kind of rebuild. You can always so there's it's everything.
I'm not disagreeing. I mean, that's the way we need to go. I totally agree with that. But I'm just saying the reality of, I don't think it's going to be 5 years. I think companies they don't make those changes like that. But the fact that someone's going out there and attempting it and making it work, it's got to start somewhere, right? I mean, someone's got to be first to do whatever.
Oh, yeah, and I'm talking like 5 years might be from when vendors like VMware, I'm not even speaking like this is not even roadmap stuff, but it might be 5 years where vendors are doing this. I mean, we had Workspace ONE as a single platform 5 years ago. The whole world is not on that, last I checked. So it's going to be a while. But I think, we'll get to the point where that is the way that things are going within EUC. I think the other thing that you see to change gears totally, if you want to look ahead to like the next 5 years, we are going to see massive evolution in the tools we use to work and to communicate. Everyone is talking about how, the world jumped ahead 10 years in the span of 1 year with the pandemic, which is not just an IT statement. That has to look at the share of e-commerce, right? E-commerce was growing 1% per year since the 90s, and now it grew 11% this year. Right. Like it really is 10 years. And so now we're all in 2030 in terms of like acceptance about ordering things from online and ride sharing and working from home and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we still have 2020 era tools. Put another way, think of it if we had the 2020 era technology, like a 2020 era society as we do today, using 2010s tools. There wouldn't be this, whatever you're doing here. I wouldn't be on TV studio with you guys, right? We wouldn't be on, I'm on a BlackBerry back then, right? There's no, it's very, very different world. So the tools that exist today that we all use, like the Zooms and the Slacks and Teams and these kinds of things, were designed for people who primarily work in an office and then occasionally need to dial in some remote people. They're not designed for the world where my whole team is distributed, but I want to work all together. Like you've heard these horror stories on like Business Insider of like the boss who makes their employees log into Zoom all day, every day. And I'm like, not work for me.
Yeah.
They're trying their best they can. So I think we're going to see some very quick in the next, single digit years, 2-3 years, some very quick iterations in, how our tools work and how our stuff operates and how we collaborate and all that sort of thing. So that is going to be a challenge for end user computing professionals who are responsible for providing technology to their users, because the actual, like in the old days, used to be the tech change, our server infrastructure, our version of Horizon, our Citrix, our Microsoft changes. But like, I mean, come on, Office 2016 versus Office like 2003. What's the difference really? I mean, besides one of them you can use on Amazon. But now we're going to see even the tools we're delivering are changing. And our needs are changing. Like before, it's like, remoting was nice and GPUs are. It's going to be very, very different there too. So it's going to hit us in both ways. Is my point in the next few years.
I would almost guarantee what's going to happen, because it does happen, that radically changes. The pandemic, obviously, right now, but a smartphone. You mentioned tablets, iPhones, Android. That was a major shift in how people access information, the ease of which you can access information on the fly, on the road, in your car, outside while you're walking trails. Before we had the little flip phones with these crappy little screens and that old crappy HTML mobile markup crap, and now we've got pretty much full browsing experience on our phones. And these phones have more power.
Yeah. Well, less rapid than we think. I think
my point being is that there's always going to be something we simply cannot predict that's going to radically change how we do things. And that's what I find fascinating, is that these things, and they always seem to kind of come out of nowhere at some point. And it takes time to get used to. I mean, you see it with online, e-commerce, Amazon. You look at all the companies that looked at Amazon when it first started and laughed and said, we're going to continue doing the things we do today. Well, where's Sears? Where's, all these companies that were Goliaths, and now they're gone. So those shifts you don't see coming. That's the fascinating part.
And I think what Claudio's saying here too is it has some merit. Is like the thing is, we're not sure if what we saw as working habits or methods during the pandemic is the best way. People are assuming that, and I'm 1000%. That's actually what I was going to say too. Is like, look, we can make some really big mistakes right now. We can really screw this up and spend the next 10 years trying to fix what we put in place right now. I'm genuinely concerned about that. But if we don't start with like what makes sense for why we're doing it, then again, we're just pushing things out and making the pretty boxes. And I don't know.
But there's mental models you can use to predict the future. You know, I don't know if you guys know the blog Farnham Street, and it's I think it's like, I don't know, the website's just fs.blog, or just Google for Farnham Street blog. Actually, I don't use Google anymore. Just DuckDuckGo for Farnham Street blog, and you know, they've written a couple books on mental models and everything. And there's a whole bunch of different ways you can think about the future, but you can start with what are the assumptions you can make these sort of like know are going to be true, right? Like if I don't think about the future of EUC and the future of Windows, like we know Microsoft operates as if they are an unregulated monopoly and is going to do anti-monopolistic things against all their competition. We know that is true. They're going to do that in 5 years. We know that, you know, device vendors are going to want to get involved with the management of their own devices, like different things like that. So when you apply to work methods, we know that in the future, some of our white collar workers are going to want to work at home all the time. Some of our I see. That's
It had to come, and it had to be Claudio.
It's
Oh, no, of course it's
Sorry,
Claudio.
Brian, you suck at predicting the future. 2013 was the year of VDI. LOL.
Yeah. And I which is why I read books on how to predict the future. And again, if you weren't listening, I never said that was the other video. But it's, what do we know about the future? For white collar office based workers in Western countries, some of them are going to want to work from home all the time. Some of them are going to want to work in an office as much as they can. Some of them are going to want to have a hybrid. And it's going to be about probably one third. It's going to vary depending on industry and that kind of stuff. You know, we know that we're going to separate like where teams are geographically located versus where you know, people are. We know that from that Jacob Morgan, the Employee Experience Advantage book, where they talk about how do you create a good employee experience. It's technology, but it's also your physical space and it's your company's culture. We know that technology is easy to deliver remotely, that culture is difficult to deliver remotely. So these are things we know about the future. So if you can lay out all of these sort of like knowns, now you can start to like see like where are the gaps and like what happens in this world, right? So we know that we know what's wrong with today. Like I'm losing those, like the water cooler conversations that everyone's talking about. I'm losing that. So I love working from home, but I'm missing the water cooler conversations. And as a human, I want to have those water cooler conversations. So we can say we know that humans value the water cooler conversation, even if it's not happening physically together at the water cooler. So these are all things we can write into like the known categories. And end user computing, you know, like let's focus on the user. Users are humans. Like there's a lot about humans. Like our world is a lot about working with humans. As a matter of fact, this year, and I've got a blog coming out, it'll probably be after the new year, I actually met with more HR people at customers than I did with IT people. And part of that is because VMware, before pandemic, we started making a push into HR as we were doing like the employee experience and the day zero onboarding and like all that kind of stuff. So we did this like HR Future Work Summit last year. It's kind of talking about this, and that started making those connections. But as I talk to these HR folks, you know, and the U in end user computing is humans essentially, right? And so those are actually, ironically, more predictable. Like look what's happening in this country and look what happened with the fall of Rome. Like it's the same, right? And the one happened 1700 years ago. And so my point is that human nature doesn't change. And so we can actually look at what nature is going to be the same 5, 10, 20 years from now, and then look at what we know about the technology and start to build a little bit of a path. That does not help us solve the problems like, well, should I use, you know, Chocolatey to manage my VDI environment? But that helps us think about the types of problems we're going to be solving. And then we can start to work our way backwards from there and kind of look at where we are. And then it's just another IT project at the end of the day.
Okay, first off, you said humans learn from the past. From what I've seen lately, I have to disagree with that.
I was saying that humans, no, we don't change. I'm saying we don't change from the past. Like because humans.
Okay, then absolutely, yes. Yeah, that is
humans are not fast. Like we're not old enough to evolve, right? Like humans are only 100,000, depends how you count, years old. Our world is evolving way faster than our ability for us as humans to evolve. So that's why, like, so many, like, man, there's a book. It was Michel Roth. Remember him? I think he's at Microsoft now. Last time I saw him was VMworld, like in person.
Yeah, Microsoft.
And he recommended a book called Sapiens, I think. And they get into it's like the history of the Homo sapien, and like looking at like what our sort of, you know, the lizard brain, the reptile brain, the cave person dweller brain. You look at all that kind of stuff, and it's like it explains a lot about the way we all act today. It explains a lot about like social media and you know, digital addiction and all that sort of thing. So I really feel like if you start looking at, you know, the things that are truths about human nature and you know, how we want to live and operate and work, you really can paint a picture for like what the ideal world would look like in the future, and then start working back and starting to make a plan for the types of problems we're going to need to solve in 5 years.
Yeah, and I think we see this a lot with what's happening right now well, let's use the VDI space because why not? We're talking about it. One of the big challenges in VDI is supporting things like Microsoft Teams, for example, or, you know, various ways that people are using to connect with each other, you know, face to face. Well, if we weren't ready for that, if that wasn't our level of preparedness, then getting hit with that request is too much. We say no. Well, we're basically denying that connection point, like the face to face, like, you know, we have right here. We could do this as a podcast interview, and I mean, obviously this will go out as a podcast as well, but it's so much more valuable to be able to kind of look into your eyes, so to speak, and I can look deeply into the camera and you can look into mine. And you know, it's one of those connection points that we need to be aware of as people that are in IT, is that we need to be providing that, especially in times when people can't be having it like the way they're used to. If we can bridge that gap, then we have much bigger wins than just a job. Now we've actually fulfilled a purpose. That's pretty, in my mind, that's like huge.
I think one of the
go ahead, Jeff.
So I think one of the best conversations that I had heard was last year at the oh my God, what is Steve Greenberg's thing called now? The EU, the Master Retreat. And Tobias Creedle was talking about his students at the time, the university that he worked at. And what he said was, you know, he said, something along the lines of like, it took us time to figure out that students today don't work the same as we do, because they've grown up with these devices. They're used to having one app open at a time and doing things. That's how they want to work. They don't necessarily want to be multitasking on these screens, you know? So it's those types of things that, you know, we need to be paying attention to. Tobias and his team picked up on that, and I thought that was brilliant. I had never thought of it that way. But you know, there are always, you know, there's changes. I think that's, it's fascinating that we've talked about, we've grown, we've got wisdom, we've got this, but we do need, you know, we still need to pay attention to what's going on down there as they're coming up, because that's part of those changes that we need to be able to take into effect as, you know, as they're coming up and stuff. And even how these technologies have disrupted what we've done. So
we put it up on the screen earlier, but Simon Frost says, but generations have new expectations about norms of operating with technology at an interesting rapid rate. I agree. I think one of those things that we kind of miss sometimes because we're old fogies is that these new youngins coming around, they, you know, they have a different way of doing things, and we need to
the way they've come up is
that.
Extraordinarily different than the way we've grown up. And, you know, with all of this at their fingertips, the way they do things, it becomes a challenge for us to adapt our solutions to them. Yeah,
absolutely. Quick logistical question here, Brian. We've gone a whopping hour and 40 minutes. And we don't want to keep you much longer. I'm sure you probably have other much more important things to do.
I have a nephew's birthday party at 3:00, so I got 20 minutes.
Yeah. All right. So one quick question
via
for
Zoom,
you, and then we can kind of wrap things up. And that is, what's next for Brian Madden? What's the next iteration here? Since you're looking into the future, what's next for you?
For me personally, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I live in I live in Seattle. I moved here towards the end of last year. Kind of spent a month or two getting settled, and then was kind of like, all right, Seattle, I'm ready for the world. And I signed up for like improv and join a running club and like bar trivia league, Ohio State fan, like all that stuff. Right. That was in February, so I had like 2 weeks of activity fun. So this is my last podcast / webcast of the year. I am packing up the whole studio, shutting it down, packing everything up. VMware is giving the whole company shut down from Christmas to New Year's. So they've been giving us these like extra days off this year just to deal with life and everything. And so I'm actually, I got my sister and her husband live. They bought a place in the southeast of the United States. It's warm. There's a pool, and I'm gonna go there for the winter. So what's next for me is I'm getting out of Seattle for the winter, you know, I'm not sure professionally. There's, you know, I've flirted with like, is it time to move on beyond EUC? Which I did when I left BrianMadden.com originally, right? But also this conversation we talk about today is like really, really exciting about, you know, moving towards more of like IT ops and like what we want to do. I mean, you talk to Sean and Ron and Jack and Gabe and like Todd Dayton and, you know, some of these old school folks at VMware. Like we have like really, really cool ideas. And like, I got a little bit of FOMO. Like I want to see some of the stuff kind of come to fruition. And I feel like, you know, I've been at VMware almost 3 years. So it's like, I'm just starting to actually understand how the company works and like how to get done what I want to get done and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And I think that because the way the work world has been stretched and broken and put back together again, like EUC is like very interesting right now. So I don't know. I like VMware. I do. And you know, VMware EUC is like kind of cool. I think there's a lot of cool things we're doing. We tell a good story, but there's other stuff in VMware that's pretty cool too. I could see a version of me being at VMware EUC for the next few years. I could see a version of me being at VMware just to transfer into a different. I would love to like do my same job in like one of the other technologies, just like even a brand new area that I know nothing about. Just like let's start from scratch and learn about. I don't even know GPUs, whatever. But you know, because I don't. I don't see myself like going somewhere else to do more like EUC. Like I did BrianMadden.com as I did the analyst. I'm doing the vendor thing. You know, if you swap out vendor A for vendor B, it's like, okay, it's their problems versus my problems. Like my job is low stress. It's high interest, low stress. The band's back together. Like I said, like Jack, my brother's there. Gabe's there. Ron's there. Sean's there. Like that's really awesome. I don't know. I also think about, you know, building pinball machines and is there a career in that? And some people have been doing pinball machines, like some small boutique, like you can actually build a pinball machine and sell 500 of them. And like, maybe that's I don't know.
Or there's a side gig kind of thing, you know, just kind of the building the overall portfolio kind of thing. Yeah.
Has Ron talked to you about the Jiffy Lube yet? I'm just because.
No, I do not know that. So
a bunch of us are. When he opens the Jiffy Lube, we're going to go over and work for him again.
You know, let me tell you a little caution tale there. So you know, I've done pretty well in my life, like career wise, and like made a lot of money. I made money in the books. I did the company. I sold the company. You know, like an IT salary, which is like pretty fortunate. And so I got to the point where the money was in the bank and it's at Vanguard and you got like your index funds and everything. And I started doing some little investments in like other businesses, but I thought, man, my whole career is tied to IT. You know, at companies, you have like stock and RSUs and it's all tied to your company and your 401. So I wanted to diversify a little bit. And I remember my great aunt and uncle like had a route of like coin op laundry machines where they like just collect the quarters. And I was like, man, you know what I need? I need like, just like some mailbox money business, like a nail salon or a gym, you know, like the Jiffy Lube, like your kind of thing. So I actually invested into some various businesses, including nail salon, gym type things. Those are all closed now. So ironically, this risky technology that I wanted to de-risk myself out of technology and diversify into like some small business. It turned into that's a lot of stress. So I kind of feel like, just put the extra paycheck back into Vanguard and kind of like let it ride.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
there's nothing wrong with that either. Yeah.
Yeah. But
So one question to bring it kind of back around before we leave, because we've talked about your career, you've had a lot of success. For those people that are starting in their career, or whether it's mid-level, or old people, what is can you briefly, a mistake, a screw up that you made that you think back, like you keep, it's like, God, yeah, I've been successful, but God, this thing just sticks in my head that I really screwed it up?
Honestly, besides the IT screw ups that we've all had, we can play this competition of like dumb stuff we've done in our career.
Oh, yeah, but
really,
we've all
not
made
counting
these.
that. Yeah. So not counting that. What I would say is this: I have a pretty good sense myself to like what I think is going to work, and I don't know that I don't even know that my view of what's going to work is any better than anyone else's view, but I feel like if I believe something that's going to work and then I'm going to build it, I have like infinity motivation. Like when I made BrianMadden.com and the blogs and the pinball assault, like it's infinity because it's my vision and I'm implementing it and the buck stops here and it's only me. And if it doesn't work, it's because of me. I can't blame anyone else. And I've been pretty lucky. I mean, there's lots of things we tried that did not work and everything over the years, but I would say and I don't want to say, and I do not feel this as regrets. I'm one, like every relationship I've been in that didn't work out, every business I've been in that didn't work. It put me right here on this planet, and it's 2:47 p.m. and I'm sitting in my own basement with this studio in my house in Seattle, and I got pinball machines, and I'm healthy, and like I have no complaints. I really have no complaints. So like even things that like were crazy wrong, I'm glad they happened because. Now that said, the things I think that were mistakes, if I look back on my career. It's the things that I did that I didn't really believe in. Like if it's something that someone else kind of convinced me to do, and it could have been like an angle for Bryform or this feature of this thing, or could be like business idea or just something where it's like, I'm in there and I'm kind of like, I don't feel it, but I don't want to say no. I'm very embarrassed. Like I don't want to like not help my friend. I'm like, can you help me with this? And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this is never gonna work. It's gonna be quagmire. It's gonna drag me, and I'm like, it's gonna be a shit. It's gonna be a bad show in the future, and then it turns out to be true, right? So like in my mind, like, and as I'm older now, I'm better at that. But I think the things like if I believed in something and I would go all in and just go towards it, that turned out very awesome. But the things where it was like, it's like the things that weren't really mine original. No, I shouldn't say like that. It's just the things I didn't really like. If I wasn't 100% in, then I should have. There's a great author I like, Mark Manson. Maybe you know him. He wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Yeah.
And it's websites like markmanson.net. I think he's got tons of great articles about life advice and all sort of thing. And he has an article. He has one article called F, F yes or no. And it's like, what you're saying, like F yes or F no? It's like no, it's F yes. Or no. And it's kind of like if it's not an F, if there's something that requires like a ton of work, it could be relationships. I've dated a lot of people who are wonderful people who on the second date, I'm like, it's fine, I guess. And then 6 months later, it's not that great. And it's like, well, if you're not F yes on date 2, why do you think you're gonna be F yes on date month 6, right?
Right.
It's the same kind of thing on work type stuff. If there's something that's going to be, and again, there might be a webcast someone wants you to do, not this one, like a VMware topic or whatever. And they're like, hey, we need someone for this webcast. Can you speak on this topic? I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't care about it, but it'll be fine. Like, yes, I can do that. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. That stuff's doesn't have high stakes. But if it's like a major thing, it's like a relationship or a business investment or like a major project, and if it's going to be a major amount of your time, if you are not F yes, then it has to be a no. Right. Unless, again, you've got other extenuating circumstances, you're a consultant and you need the money to live. Like, that's all, obviously, that makes it an F yes. But I would say that everything, if I can paint broadly, everything in my life that I, again, not regret, but like probably would have played differently now if I knew what I knew now. it would have been stuff that took major commitments from me where I wasn't in FES, but I did it anyway. And then, kind of wish I hadn't maybe later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be true to yourself.
When I deal with coaching, and somebody wants to do coaching with me, there's always that litmus test. Like, you either want to or you don't. And this hemming and hawing on maybe, no. You either want to work with me or you don't. And it's okay either way. I'm not for everybody, and everybody's not for me. It's okay. We can have that agreement. But when it comes to your career, you've only got, 40 workable years. I mean, really? What are you going to spend them on? You're going to just do stuff that, other people are basically just leading you down to the path of, or do you want to do things that you're actually passionate about? Absolutely.
And I guess, Jeff Bezos, there's a new book that just came out. This basic collection of all his writings. I think Mossberg, Isaacson wrote the intro. It's got all his shareholder letters and then a bunch of his writings. And so, he's very famous about his shareholder letters. It's pretty interesting to read all 25 of them in the span of like a week. And, he talks about the life, like regret minimization framework. And I think this is only something that as an older person, you start to look back in your life. And really, I feel like in my life, I want to minimize my regrets. And so, that doesn't mean it kind of becomes like the chance you didn't take and that kind of stuff. And you want to, again, balance out, and you don't want to be reckless with things. But that's what kind of led me to leave BrianMadden.com. And there was nothing wrong with it. It was just like, I don't know, I'm doing it. I'm not like, what now? I could do it again. And, as a tech target, which is great, but like the contract was renewal, and like, do I want to commit to another 5 years? And like, what if I did something else? And what if I did something else? And now I'm like part of VMware, like driving the future, sitting in my house in Seattle. Like, all these things would not have happened if I was another 5 years in a tech target.
Right.
So I feel like just sort of like figure out what you would sort of regret having not done in your deathbed. And I don't know. I'm over 40 now, right? So I think about all this kind of stuff.
We've got a great question in the comments here. Jason Congrass. Hey, Brian, you've mentioned books a fair bit in your career. Do you have a recommended reading list consolidated somewhere in addition to DJ's book, of course?
Oh, I don't, but that'd be a great LinkedIn post.
Or actually you just write one up. We'll put it on our soon to be
because I would do like, there's like 4 or 5 that I would sort of, there's a million books, right? But yeah, there's like 4 or 5 I feel like that are that I would call like must reading for sort of everyone. So I will absolutely do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. I think that's probably something that I should do as well. You can't see it here, but there's like an entire long, like, bookshelf full of more than just my books.
I got all, and yours are going in my like IT book, like books written by friends. It's very cool. I love this. Would you have joined VMware if Sean and the band wasn't there? Well, the band came. I brought the band with me, so I joined.
I was gonna say it was the other way around.
Yeah.
Then Gabe joined. Then Jack joined. Then Ron joined. However, would I have joined VMware if Sean Bass was not there? No. I can 100. As a matter of fact, I was looking at Amazon. And I was going on the path of AWS, and like, it was pretty much a done deal. And I sort of ran into Sean randomly. This is the time while I wasn't working, and I was at the iGel at Disrupt conference that year. As a matter of fact, I was talking about IoT, my pinball software at the iGel conference, and like Sean Bass, we passed each other in the hall, and it's like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And he, I was like, man, I got news. And he said, dude, I got news. And so we actually bounced. We went to a restaurant for dinner, like just 2 of us. So we would be like away from the conference. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to work at AWS. And we talked through all that kind of stuff, and it was great. And then the next day he texted me and was kind of like, hey, good catching up. Shouldn't have gone so long. But by the way, I have to put it out there. Obviously, AWS is awesome. You'll do fine there, but we'd love to have you at, VMware EUC. If there's any way we can entertain. And I was kind of like, I think my response back was emoji like this, like I wrote the VDA Delusion. Am I welcome there? And it was just like, man, it's AWS. Like, how cool is that? But, I figured it's worth the conversation. I'd known Sean for a lot of time, and I talked to him on the phone. He talked a little bit about Workspace ONE, the strategy, and where they're going, because I had missed a few years because I was not working, right? And he talked about all that stuff, and I was like, dude, that's pretty solid. And AWS, like, I don't know if you know anyone that works there, or it's an interesting company, and interesting mode of operation and all that kind of stuff. And so, it was compelling enough with VMware. And
It was the right. It was the right. Heck yes. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it was right. It was right. It was right enough that I continue to recruit my friends. So yeah, and it's I'm very much in this place in my life. Like it's good until it's not, and that may be a year, it may be 6 years, maybe 10 years. There's a lot of people at VMware who, these big companies too, Microsoft does this, AWS does this. You can move around, like I was saying too. So like in the old days, like a tech target, if I get tired of BrianMadden.com, like career over. Like I said, if I get tired of EUC, I can just transfer and now work in the CTO office of.
Yeah, you got.
I don't even know what they do. Yep. There's 24 buildings in campus. There's 23 buildings I've never been into. What do they do?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like building kind of mental diversity, I guess you could say, or there's like some diversity of experience. It always does great things. It's
yeah. Like once you get really good at your job, that's awesome for like a year, and then you're bored.
Right. Right. And there's only so far you can go, if it's not. And honestly, I'll also say that some people just really do thrive in those kind of environments. I know a lot of people that really, they just are very, very happy to do their thing really well and then go the F home and not think about it anymore. That makes them very happy.
Like I am a single person, right? Like I'm not in a relationship right now. So my future is open. If I meet someone and she's like, I want to go, work for Doctors Without Borders in Africa, and maybe I'm like, okay, they'll need a diesel mechanic. Like I'm there. Like who knows? So I like having the idea of like, that's why I say like what I'm doing now is awesome and it works for now. But I want to keep open. And maybe in that point, maybe something else happens in my life that's more interesting, and then my day job gets like demoted in my mind to like just a means to live. And then I want a job that's like low stress and no travel, more so than bigger impact or something, because you're getting your impact in your life elsewhere. So it various points in your life, what's important to you changes, and I'm ready to let that let it evolve as it needs to.
Absolutely. Wow. So many comments, so many things going on. Thank you all for participating. Hey, if you're actually live with us really quick right now, well, even if you're not live, if you're watching this after the fact, hit that subscribe button, because that'll tell YouTube what you like, and the like button too, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like tuning the algorithm so they can say, hey, so-and-so is like so-and-so, and I want to put THRIVEcast in front of them. So that's a good thing. It's a good thing. But anyway, let's get to a section where we like to say final thoughts. So Brian, thanks first of all for being with us. We really appreciate it. But any final thoughts you want to share with us before we send you back to the green room?
No, this was awesome, man. I really appreciate the invitation, and I love that we got to talk about like not really IT stuff a lot. I mean, obviously it was kind of some of that threaded through, but it was kind of cool just to have like a conversation about humans. So DJ and Jeff, again, thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on with us, and we'll have to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, love it.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks. All right, Jeff.
All right. Obviously great. Thank you to Brian Madden. It is amazing when I think about how long we've known each other. Yes, we met in Paris for the weekend. The fact that I can say I was in Paris for the weekend is like the greatest thing ever, in my opinion.
Too, yeah.
But and it's been a great trip. Like he said, I was doing Madden's classes. Brian got me into doing his Bri Forum. We've connected quite a bit over the years, and thank you, Brian, for the support over the years and everything. It's been great, and loved having you on.
Absolutely. So yeah, thanks for being with us as always, Jeff. Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being with us. This has just been a great show, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for your support and your continued patience as we learn and grow and do all these things. We do encourage you, of course, to live with passion. Don't just do things just because you think it's the only way you can do it. If you've learned anything from watching these episodes, it's probably that there's lots of different ways to to be yourself. And there's not one story that's been exactly the same. And that's what I love about doing this. So we look forward to serving you more on another future THRIVEcast episode. So in closing, we'll just say, you know what, in everything you're doing out there, make sure you leave it better than you find it. We'll see you next week. If I can make this work.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of THRIVEcast. We truly hope you've enjoyed the experience and have learned a lot from it. Now, what we'd want from you next is to join us at thrive-it.com, where you can get subscribed to our multiple channels, get subscribed to our newsletter, and do more to get yourself to where you want to be in your career and your life in information technology. If there's anything we can do to help you, please give us an email at support@thrive-it.com. We'll see you next time.
We got to click that unmute button.
Hey.
While we're still live with everybody, we want to thank all of you for your attendance today and for all your questions and the various stuff you said, good and bad, in the comments. It was a lot of fun today. We hope to see you next week. Have a great time, great weekend, and happy holidays to everyone. Sayonara. Cheers, everybody.